Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you are watching The World Report. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. Hamas frees 3 emaciated Israeli hostages as Israel releases Palestinian prisoners under the ceasefire deal. Netanyahu sends negotiations to Doha amid the fragile truce. Lebanon PM Nawaf Salam unveils a new government. The Prime Minister vows reforms to tackle political and economic crisis. North Korean leader Kim Jong Un has criticized military cooperation between the US, Japan and South Korea, claiming it raises regional tensions. In response, he has pledged to further develop North Korea's nuclear forces. Taiwan's Ministry of Defense has detected 14 Chinese military aircraft and 6 naval vessels near its territory. In response, Taiwan has deployed the appropriate forces. The recent exchange of hostages and prisoners between Israel and Hamas has raised grave concerns. This comes as 3 hostages were reported to be in poor medical condition. Israel has already vowed strong repercussions. Let's learn more from this report.
3 male Israeli hostages and 183 Palestinian prisoners were freed in the 5th round of exchanges between Israel and Hamas. However, the homecoming was stained by concerns over the gaunt, frail appearance of the released hostages.
ההשלכות של 491 ימים ארוכים בשבי ניכרות על שני השבים שהגיעו לשיבא היום ומצבם הרפואי ירוד. זו הפעם הרביעית במתווה הנוכחי שאנו קולטים שבים והמצב הפעם חמור יותר.
This has angered the Israeli government, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatened to take unspecified action in response to what Israel believes are Hamas violations of the ceasefire.
שוב ראינו מה זה מפלצות החמאס. זה אותן מפלצות שטבחו באזרחינו והתעללו בחטופינו, ואני אומר להם שוב, דמם בראשם. אנחנו נעשה הכל להחזיר את כל החטופים, אבל חמאס לא יהיה שם. אנחנו נחסל את החמאס ונחזיר את חטופינו. זאת ההנחיה, וכך נעשה.
Netanyahu also mentioned that US President Donald Trump agrees with his plan of action. Additionally, Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, sent a letter to the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres demanding that he publicly condemn Hamas following the dire physical condition of the 3 Israeli hostages. The events made an already tenuous ceasefire more fragile, possibly endangering the next steps in the truce agreement. However, Netanyahu has approved sending a delegation to Doha. An Israeli official said the team would not be discussing the second phase of the deal. Meanwhile, protesters rallied outside the defense ministry in Israel over the release of the remaining hostages, being concerned for their safety and sound health.
The horrendous scene we have witnessed today, this morning, is just a reminder that the fate of all the remaining hostages is in our hands, and we must do everything within our power to get them back as soon as possible. We must rush the second phase, the third phase. There is no time. We've all seen them.
Following the release of these 3 hostages, Hamas and its allies still hold a total of 73 people taken from Israel on October 7th. How will the deal unfold with such drastic changes is to be seen. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from across North America. At least 41 people have died after a bus caught fire in a crash in southern Mexico. Tabasco officials confirmed the crash near Escaragega early Saturday. The bus, operated by Tours Acosta, was traveling from Cancun to Tabasco. It collided with a trailer and burst into flames. The company expressed regret and is working with authorities to find the cause. A magnitude 7.6 earthquake hit the Caribbean Sea on Saturday. It struck about 130 miles off the Cayman Islands. The US Geological Survey said the quake was shallow, but alerts warn of waves up to 10 feet in Cuba. Smaller surges were expected in Honduras and the Cayman Islands. Tsunami warnings were issued later, but later lifted. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau believes Donald Trump's threat to annex Canada as a 51st state is serious. Speaking at a summit, Trudeau suggested the move is linked to Canada's vast critical mineral reserves. He noted Trump's strong interest in these resources and claimed annexation is seen as an easy way to secure them. The United States is prepared to resettle South African farmers facing persecution, a State Department spokesperson said. Tammy Bruce, the spokesperson, stated on social media that those targeted based on race would be welcome in the United States. She also affirmed support for settlers' descendants facing land seizures. The statement follows President Trump's executive order freezing US aid to South Africa. Residents drove off neo-Nazi demonstrators waving swastika flags on a highway overpass near Lincoln Heights and Evandale, Ohio. White nationalist groups in Ohio have held similar demonstrations, including a March by Hate Club in Columbus last November. About a dozen masked individuals in black clothing displayed swastika banners and a sign reading "America for the White Man." Traffic cameras captured the scene. Donald Trump will be the first sitting US president to attend a Super Bowl, joining 74,000 fans at the Caesars Superdome. His attendance comes amid a long-strained relationship with the NFL, dating back to his failed bid to join as an owner in the 1980s. Security is tight, especially after the deadly New Year's Orleans attack. Donald Trump has revoked security clearances for Antony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, a day after blocking Joe Biden's access to intelligence briefings. The move widens Washington's political divide. Meanwhile, a US judge refused to block Elon Musk's government cost-cutting team from accessing federal systems, a setback for unions fighting his plan to shrink bureaucracy. Take a look at this report.
President Donald Trump has revoked security clearances for Antony Blinken, the former Secretary of State, and Jake Sullivan, the former National Security Advisor. The move came a day after Trump said he had revoked the security clearance for his predecessor Joe Biden, stopping his access to daily intelligence briefings. While the revocations may not have immediate impacts, it is another sign of the growing rift in Washington. Former US presidents have traditionally received intelligence briefings so they can advise incumbent presidents on national security and foreign policy. In 2021, Biden revoked the security clearance for Trump, who was then a former president. Meanwhile, a federal judge on Friday declined to block Elon Musk's government cost-cutting department from accessing the US Department of Labor systems, an initial setback for the government employee unions resisting his efforts to shrink the federal bureaucracy. The temporary ruling by US District Judge John Bates in Washington, D.C., is the first step in a lawsuit against the Labor Department by one of the largest US labor unions, which alleges billionaire Musk could obtain sensitive information about investigations into his own companies and competitors by accessing government computer systems. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now bring you some news updates from the world of business. China's consumer inflation reached its highest level in 5 months at 0.5% in January, while producer prices continued to decline. Analysts warn that deflationary pressures will likely persist unless domestic demand improves, partly due to US tariffs on Chinese goods. Core inflation also increased to 0.6%. Seasonal factors related to the Lunar New Year influence these prices dynamics, usually leading to higher consumer spending. As gold prices soar to nearly $2,900 an ounce, Hatton Garden jewelry shops face increased sales pressure, with more sellers than buyers. This is consistently increasing prices, noted shop owner Nawaf Salam. Despite global jewelry demand dropping 11% in 2024, spending has increased by 9%. A resurgence of avian flu has severely impacted US chicken farms, causing egg prices to skyrocket and leaving supermarket shelves nearly empty. Consumers express frustration as prices soar, with the average dozen eggs raising from $2.50 to $4.15. The outbreak has led to euthanasia of over 21 million hens, resulting in a significant supply shortage. Canadian fund Brookfield will invest €20 billion by 2030 to develop data centers in France, supporting AI growth. The deal, confirmed by French media, aligns with Paris hosting a major AI summit next week. A €15 billion mega project in Cambrai is central to the plan, with €5 billion allocated to infrastructure. The agreement was signed by French President Emmanuel Macron and Brookfield CEO Bruce Flatt on January the 31st. Investment management has taken a significant stake in BP, aiming to boost shareholder value. Bloomberg reports Elliott sees BP as undervalued and is urging transformative measures. BP, with a market cap of £69 billion, plans cost cuts and strategic shifts under CEO Murray Ancelos. The company will outline its new strategy on February the 26th, ahead of its earnings report on February the 11th. Elon Musk is not interested in buying TikTok, stating he prefers to build companies from scratch. Before Trump's inauguration, there was a push to ban TikTok over national security concerns linked to its Chinese owner, ByteDance. Donald Trump signed an order to create a sovereign wealth fund, suggesting it could buy TikTok. The future of TikTok in the US remains uncertain amid ongoing regulatory scrutiny. A massive landslide struck Zhejiang County in southwestern Sichuan region of China, burying 10 houses and leaving over 30 people missing. The Ministry of Emergency Management has launched a high-level operation deploying hundreds of rescuers. This disaster follows a recent 5.5 magnitude earthquake in Qinghai province. Here is a full report.
A massive landslide struck China's Sichuan province, leaving at least 30 people missing. The disaster, caused by heavy rainfall and geological instability, buried 10 homes in Zhejiang County. Rescue operations are actively underway as emergency teams search for survivors. China's Ministry of Emergency Management has deployed hundreds of rescuers, including firefighters. 2 individuals have been rescued alive with injuries, and their condition remains under evaluation. Around 200 residents have been relocated to safer areas to avoid further danger. A local manufacturing facility was also buried under the debris, further complicating recovery efforts. Authorities are continuing to assess the damage, and the search for missing people is ongoing. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from across Europe. The 3 Baltic states will connect to the European Union's power grid after they seamlessly severed Soviet-era ties with Russia's network. Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, former Soviet states that are now EU and NATO members, have been keen to make the change since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. EU Energy Commissioner Dan Jorgensen said that this is all about security. He said this while visiting Tallinn for the historic grid change. Thousands rally in Paris on the 8th of February 2025, marking the 46th anniversary of the overthrow of the Shah's dictatorship. Tens of thousands of Iranians and supporters of the National Council of Resistance of Iran gathered in Paris for a large-scale rally and march. The demonstrators demanded regime change in Iran and the establishment of a democratic republic. They also denounced the regime's hostage-taking of foreign nationals and urged their immediate release. Hundreds of demonstrators protested at a site embarked for Beijing's controversial new embassy in London over human rights and security concerns. For several years, China has been trying to relocate its embassy, which is currently in the British capital's upmarket Marylebone district, to the sprawling historic site below the Tower of London. Leaders of far-right parties in the European Parliament's third large voting bloc praised Donald Trump's return to power at a gathering in Madrid on Saturday. It was held under the slogan "Make Europe Great Again." The event featured Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán and Italian Deputy Premier Matteo Salvini. More than 200,000 protesters have rallied in the southern German city of Munich against far-right extremism ahead of the country's general election. The far-right anti-immigrant Alternative for the German Party is currently second place in recent polls. Polls have prompted widespread protests across the country before voters head to the ballot box on the 23rd of February. According to the reports, the protests attracted a significantly larger crowd than expected. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán and France's Marine Le Pen headlined a rally in Madrid by Europe's biggest far-right voting bloc, but was buoyed by Donald Trump's return to power and calling for a 180-degree pivot. Patriots for Europe have realigned extreme right forces in the European Union. It became the European Parliament's third largest force. A region on the edge. North Korea denounces military ties between the US, Japan and South Korea, vowing to bolster its nuclear forces. As tensions rise, Kim Jong Un reaffirms his unwavering support for Russia. What does this mean for global security? Let's take a look at the full report.
North Korean leader Kim Jong Un has criticized trilateral military cooperation among the United States, Japan and South Korea, saying it has raised tensions in the region. However, Kim has accused US deployments of nuclear strategic assets, war exercises, and military cooperation with its allies of creating a military imbalance in the region. He has also called it a grave security challenge and has promised continued countermeasures to maintain regional stability. During a visit to North Korea's defense ministry on Saturday, Kim reaffirmed his stance on nuclear force expansion. His comments come after US President Donald Trump met with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, where they expressed concerns over North Korea's nuclear ambitions. However, Kim has also voiced strong support for Russia in its war with Ukraine. He has declared unwavering backing for Moscow, citing the DPRK-Russia Strategic Partnership Treaty. In a separate statement, North Korea's state media has again criticized joint military drills between South Korea and the US, warning of severe consequences for such actions. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from across the Indo-Pacific. Saudi Arabia has firmly rejected Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's remarks about displacing Palestinians, condemning them as out of touch with Palestinian historical and legal ties to their land. The statement follows Netanyahu's offhand response to his suggestion about a Palestinian state on Saudi territory, which both Egypt and Jordan also condemned. Riyadh also dismissed Donald Trump's claim that Saudi Arabia was not demanding a Palestinian state as a condition for normalizing ties with Israel, reaffirming that recognition of a Palestinian state remains a prerequisite. Gyalo Thondop, elder brother of the Dalai Lama and former chairman of the exiled Tibetan government, has died at 97 in Kalimpong, India. A key figure in Tibetan diplomacy, he facilitated US support and engaged in talks with China on Tibet's future. The Dalai Lama led prayers for him, honouring his contributions to the Tibetan cause. Thondop played a crucial role in securing India's support when the Dalai Lama fled in 1959 and later initiated discussions with Beijing in 1979. He served as the chairman of the Tibetan government in exile from 1991 to 1993. Canada and the Philippines are finalizing a defense pact to expand joint military drills amid rising tensions with China. Canadian Ambassador David Hartman confirmed the agreement would enhance training and cooperation, reinforcing Manila's effort to counter Beijing's assertiveness in the South China Sea. Canada has been increasing its military presence in the Indo-Pacific, backing the Philippines with surveillance technology and joint patrols. The pact follows similar Philippine agreements with the US, Australia and Japan. New Zealand is overhauling its golden visa program to attract wealthy investors and boost economic recovery. Immigration Minister Erica Stanford announced from April the 1st, the active investor plus visa will have fewer categories, a broader range of investments and no English language requirement. Other barriers, such as residency duration, will also be eased. The government, seeking foreign capital after a 2024 recession, has streamlined investment rules and created a single agency for overseas fund managers. The program previously brought in $1 billion annually, but declined after 2022 rule changes. Prince Karim al-Husseini Aga Khan IV, the 49th Imam of the Shia Ismaili Muslims, will be laid to rest on February the 9th in Aswan, Egypt. Alongside his grandfather, Aga Khan III, his son Prince Rahim al-Husseini has been named the 50th hereditary Imam. Aga Khan IV was renowned for his extensive philanthropic work through the Aga Khan Development Network, focusing on health, education and economic development across Africa and Asia. Lebanon ends years of deadlock with a new 24-member government. Prime Minister Nawaf Salam pledges reforms and stability. Meanwhile, an Israeli air raid kills 6 in eastern Lebanon, targeting an alleged Hezbollah site. Here is a full report.
Lebanon's new government ends years of deadlock with a 24-member cabinet focused on reforms, economic recovery and border stability. Prime Minister Nawaf Salam announced the government evenly split between Christian and Muslim sects as Lebanon faces the challenge of rebuilding and restoring trust.
والأهم ستسعى إلى وصل من قطع بين الدولة وطموحات الشابات والشباب لتبعث الأمل في نفوسهم فيشعرون أن أحلامهم يمكن أن تولد هنا وتتحقق هنا في وطنهم.
Negotiations stalled over Shia ministers, with Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri and Hezbollah insisting on control of the Finance Ministry, a post historically held by Berri's Amal party. Last-minute talks above the palace resolved disputes, clearing the way for the new administration. Meanwhile, U.S. envoy Morgan Ortagus, on her first visit to Lebanon, reaffirmed Washington's red line against Hezbollah's inclusion, adding to the political pressure on Salam.
It is thanks to President Aoun and the Prime Minister-designate Nawaf Salam and everyone in this government who is committed to an end of corruption, who's committed to reforms, and who are committed to making sure that Hezbollah is not a part of this government in any form and that Hezbollah remains disarmed and militarily defeated.
On the other hand, an Israeli air raid in eastern Lebanon killed 6 and wounded 2, targeting an alleged Hezbollah weapons site near Janata. The fragile ceasefire remains at risk amid ongoing tensions. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates coming in from South America. Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa looks likely to win his country's presidential election. This comes as voters rally behind his promises to fight crime, despite critiques from his opponents that he has not done enough. Noboa has said his deployment of the military on the streets and within prisons, among other measures, has reduced violent deaths by 15%. Noboa and Luis Gonzalez are the clear frontrunners among the pool of 16 candidates. Chile's President Gabriel Boric issued a state of emergency decree for 2 regions in the country. The orders came due to the threat of raging wildfires. He said the measures would include curfews to allow the authorities to tackle possible criminal acts. Local authorities say there are about 15 active fire outbreaks in Chile currently. Also, more than 60 arrests have been made recently in connection with forest fires so far. Brazil's presidential chief of staff said the government was not studying an increase to the Bolsa Família cash transfer benefit. This statement contradicted remarks made earlier in the day by a minister that an adjustment was on the table. Bolsa Família is more than a 20-year-old program. It provides direct cash transfers to Brazil's poorest households at an annual cost of $28.7 billion. A readjustment would have come as the president has expressed concerns over rising food prices for Brazilians. Ecuador has temporarily closed its land borders with Colombia and Peru. This is to ensure national security as the presidential general elections take place. The closure, in coordination with immigration authorities, will remain in effect until Monday as part of immediate security actions. President Daniel Noboa ordered on Monday that the border shut down in response to alleged destabilization attempts by armed groups. A small aircraft crashed on an avenue in Sao Paulo shortly after taking off from a nearby private airport. The two people on board and the pilot and the plane's owner were both killed. A piece of the plane hit a bus, injuring one woman inside, while a motorcyclist was struck by another piece of wreckage. Both were receiving medical care. 4 more people who were injured were taken to the hospitals in the area with minor injuries. That is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world.